Many students had a hard time adjusting to remote learning during the 2020-2021 school year. How parents and students are making adjustments for the upcoming fall semester. Plus, hear how the people of Somerville are working to help out 2 employees of a local restaurant.
And we've seen some scattered showers and thunderstorms across the area for today and below normal temperatures. Some drier air with northerly winds will be filtering in for Tuesday and Wednesday. And will we stay below normal? Your 25 News starts right now.
Connecting the Brazos Valley, this is KRHD News.
Good evening and thank you for tuning in to KRHD News. I'm Kelly Jones. COVID-19 caused many students to fall behind in school due to remote learning. Now some parents are considering holding their child back a year to catch up. And as KRHD News reporter Rachel Espayat explains, new state legislation is allowing parents to make that choice.
Deciding to hold a child back for a school year is a tough decision, but Kayla Clark, a mother of 2, says she would make the choice if needed.
I don't think you should just push them. I think, if they need to be held back, hold them back, but don't expect them just to jump right back into it.
Because of all the disruptions due to COVID, the state legislature passed a bill this session that allows parents to decide if their child repeats a course or grade. For parents with students between pre-K and 3rd grade, it's a permanent option.
We can't overturn them, but I do feel like we have a responsibility to counsel them, talk about the pluses and minuses.
For 4th graders and above, parents only have the authority to choose for the upcoming school year. Peter says so far only 3 families in Caldwell ISD plan to have their children stay back a year. He says if more families choose to do this, it can also throw off enrollment numbers. Rachel Espayat, KRHD News.
And data from the TEA shows that schools who used mostly remote learning saw an increase in students who did not meet their grade level during STAR testing. In fact, districts with fewer than 25% in-person attendance saw a 9% increase in students who did not meet their grade level in reading and a 32% increase in math, while districts with more than 75% in person only saw a 1% increase in reading and a 9% increase in math. The Education Department has released a guide for parents and educators on how to return to school safely this fall. The Return to School Roadmap lays out strategies on how to implement the CDC's updated mask recommendations for schools. It also provides guidance in 3 key areas: prioritizing health and safety, accelerating academic achievement, and supporting social, emotional, and mental health for students. To learn more about how parents, students, and schools across the Brazos Valley are adjusting for the upcoming fall semester, connect with KRHD online. It's simple. Pull out your phones, open the camera app, and scan the QR code. A notification banner will open at the top of your screen. Tap that banner to access our website and all of our social media accounts as well. A federal freeze that allows renters to stay in their home during the pandemic without fear of getting kicked out has expired. KRHD News reporter Hannah King explains what this means for Brazos Valley residents.
No matter where you are moving from or going to, moving is stressful and even harder for someone facing eviction. With evictions now on the horizon for so many in the near future, those in the property ownership industry say it does not all happen overnight. The move-out process not just hard on those with the sign on their door, but those whose bills had to still be paid in the midst of it all. With or without the moratorium expiring, there are a lot of moving parts with a lot of people involved when it comes to property ownership during the pandemic.
It was more frustrating for our owners and what that may be facing, property investors, because they still have to pay their mortgage. They weren't given relief in that. So tenants not paying rent, therefore makes it more difficult for people to pay their mortgage and continue to do repairs that are required by the property code and things like that.
The Brazos County Emergency Rental Assistance Program says there are funds still available for those who qualify, and they are assisting with evictions. Reporting in Bryan, Hannah King, KRHD News.
According to a survey by the U.S. Census Bureau, approximately 600,000 Texas households are behind on rent. The majority of those are Black and Hispanic families. Nationally, 11.5 million adults who rent are behind on payment. That number makes up about 14% of all renters in the country. The survey also says that 1 in 5 renters with children are behind on their rent payments. Meanwhile, the state's eviction diversion program is being extended per the Texas Supreme Court. The program started in response to the pandemic and is now extended through September. It provides an alternative to evictions if both the tenant and the landlord agrees to participate. It offers up to 15 months of rental and utility assistance. For more information, visit texasrentrelief.com. 2 employees of a Somerville restaurant were significantly injured last week when a vehicle crashed through the side of the building. KRHD reporter Rebecca Fiedler discusses the aftermath and how the Somerville community is working to help the women affected.
Mama's Kitchen, a decades-old staple of Somerville dining, has been closed now for several days after a vehicle struck the building's backside, bursting into the restaurant's kitchen area. I'm standing here in front of the spot where the vehicle collided with the building. You can see behind me there are still pieces of the vehicle left behind. The crash caused a vat of bubbling hot oil to splash onto a waitress and cook who were standing inside. Both women had to be airlifted to Memorial Hospital in Houston and receive treatment for their burns. As these women, named Amber and Feedy, start their long journey to recovery, the people of Somerville have organized multiple efforts to raise money for the incoming medical bills.
Nothing that is being raised will go to anyone but those 2 girls. They have medical bills. Amber's a single mom. The waitress's parents, are trying to stay up there with her, and of course that's a financial burden. So,
Jerry Negretti spent her Monday afternoon preparing tickets for a barbecue fundraiser, which will take place the afternoon of August 15th at Lake Somerville's Welch Park Pavilion, where she regularly volunteers.
when something tragic like this happens, Somerville is really good at pulling together, and taking care of our own.
Negretti hopes Brazos Valley residents will come out and support the auction and raffle, which will directly benefit the injured employees. The story of Mama's Kitchen has reached hearts outside of the Brazos Valley as well. One woman living east of Houston is friends with the owner of Mama's Kitchen, Tommy Thompson, and has started her own online fundraiser for the injured staffers.
Tommy will give his shirt off his back to anybody. They're just that horrible, felt like that I couldn't do anything really to help. So I thought I can raise what little money I can raise. Anything helps.
While Mama's Kitchen staff didn't feel comfortable coming on camera just yet, they told KRHD News that they have been traumatized and emotionally shaken and are asking for prayers and support. Those interested in helping can make a donation through the Venmo app to user Miranda-Jade-5, or they can call Citizen State Bank in Somerville and make a donation to the Mama's Kitchen Fund. Reporting in Somerville, Rebecca Fiedler, KRHD News.
The Education Department is trying to help students and teachers get back to the classroom safely this fall with a return to school roadmap, laying out strategies on how to implement the CDC's updated mask recommendations for schools, and it provides guidance in 3 key areas: prioritizing health and safety, accelerating academic achievement, and supporting social, emotional, and mental health for students. Now, even before the pandemic, mental health experts say that social media was influencing feelings of isolation, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts in kids.
We can only expect that after a year and a half, over a year of sitting behind screens, being at home more, that there's going to be some more of these unhealthy mental health situations.
Tessa Stuckey is a licensed professional counselor that works with teens. And she says as they get back to school this fall, it's an important time for parents and teachers to pay attention to warning signs. And that could be things like feeling so overwhelmed or anxious, assignments don't get done. Also depressive thoughts or the inability to find joy, and turning to their phone as a way to cope in uncomfortable situations.
So what has happened is they are seeking this immediate gratification and this instant fix through their phone for distraction.
Now, to combat this, she says that's where conversations with parents and teachers come in. The biggest thing is for kids to see the connections they can make outside of social media and learning how to handle problems like bullying without turning to their phone.
What I always ask my clients and anyone really, is what do you like to do for fun, and what do you like to do that's relaxing, and list at least 3 things for each of those questions, and they don't include a screen. And that's a really great place to start.
Now, she says for younger kids who may not have a phone yet but are pushing to get one, parents should consider something like Pinwheel, which is a smartphone that only allows a variety of apps approved by therapists, teachers, and parents. Now, for schools that may not be returning to in-person learning, Bark is a free resource. It can help teachers keep track of any cyberbullying that's happening and social media use during class on school-issued computers. Now, misinformation online continues to be very effective in the pandemic.
It's easier for us to find those shortcuts. It's easier for us to find somebody who does the thinking for us.
How just 12 people have been driving the majority of that misinformation.
The latest shortages, school supplies, parents scrambling for backpacks and crayons are finding shelves thin in some stores. Consumer reporter John Mattery shows what's different in the school aisles this year so you don't waste your money.
Back to school shopping is looking very different this year because of the return to in-person learning and also because of, once again, those frustrating shortages. Tiara Smith was taking her children into Walmart for back-to-school supplies. You looking forward to have them in school?
Yes, I am. I actually am.
Mom Samantha Allen was also glad to see some normalcy after a long pandemic winter.
I'm excited for them. We get to start new schools this year, so we're excited.
But things are a little different this year. Walmart and many stores are coping with supply shortages that on this day meant a lack of character backpacks. But Walmart's Randy Wood says they're trying to stock the shelves and keep prices low.
So you see all the red tags, that's all of our rollbacks.
Store managers tell us the biggest change they're seeing with back-to-school shopping this year is a resurgence in clothing sales. Last year, many kids spent the day in their PJs for their online learning.
Kids are coming back into school now. Last year, they were remote learning. So now we have a big push on our apparel.
She says girls should be thrilled to find Justice clothing in Walmart stores now that Justice stores have closed in malls. Matt Goen says they're expecting a big rebound in sales this year.
Last year it was very, very slow because most schools were doing remote, so sales were very soft.
One thing you won't see as much of this year, those 10-cent crayons and spiral notebooks, because supplies are so tight. So don't waste your money. I'm John Mattery, 25 News.
First Alert Chief Meteorologist Matt Hines is here with a look at weather.
And there have been a few showers here around the Brazos Valley, but will that continue? Well, here's what we're tracking for you. It looks like we'll have some isolated thunderstorms for the rest of the week in the afternoon hours, but we're talking just a 20% chance. So not everyone's seeing rain. And then highs are going to be slightly below normal, and normal is about 96 to 98 this time of year. So we're going to be slightly below that. Again, not a major difference, but it's better than talking about 100 plus. And it will be a seasonably hot weekend out there, as we will have those highs in the mid to upper 90s. There are a few showers that are creeping in from the north, and those will continue to move their way to the south, so don't be surprised to hear a few rumbles of thunder as we head to the evening hours. But I do think that dies out later on tonight as drier air continues to filter in from the north. But this boundary may actually go stationary somewhere close to the Brazos Valley or just to our south, which could again bring some of those isolated thunderstorms into the forecast here over the next couple of days. So things dying out as we head toward 10 o'clock with the loss of daytime heating. So the evening hours could bring a few rain showers, but other than that, I do think after 10 o'clock going into 7 o'clock Tuesday morning, things will be pretty quiet and we will have mostly cloudy skies. During the afternoon, partly cloudy, maybe an isolated storm or two, and we'll just do it all over again on Wednesday. A few clouds in the morning, partly cloudy skies in the afternoon, maybe an isolated shower to go along with that as well. So tonight, temperatures will be diving down into the low to mid 70s for you. Then we'll make it into the lower 90s for most of us tomorrow. And guess what? That's way below normal for this time of year. And your 10-day forecast showing those below normal temperatures Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on into Friday with isolated thunderstorms across the area each and every afternoon. But remember, 20% chance that you'll get wet, 80% chance that you won't. Then we head into the weekend. Temperatures will be into the mid to upper 90s. That's going to continue into next week as well. And we may have a few more isolated afternoon and evening thunderstorms into next week as well.
New research is further proving how effective COVID vaccines are. The Kaiser Family Foundation analyzed state data and found less than 1% of fully vaccinated people end up with a breakthrough infection. Up until now, the CDC only showed breakthrough infections resulting in hospitalization. Now that's an even lower rate at less than 0.004%, even less than that. Those who have died from a breakthrough infection. Unvaccinated people make up more than 90% of cases in the United States right now. And the newsfeed starts with numbers rising that are not just COVID cases. The amount of vaccinations are also on the rise in the U.S. The rate of doses given has gone up pretty steadily since last month. There were more than 100,000 daily COVID cases on Friday last week, as the Delta variant is mostly infecting unvaccinated people. 2 more countries are planning to give COVID booster shots. Germany and the UK will start giving the shots in September. The US has not announced yet whether people will need those shots. Now, while there are concerns about the Delta variant, the UK is letting fully vaccinated travelers from the US and Europe visit starting today. Leaders may put certain British destinations on a watch list as a warning in case the number of cases rise there. And as the Delta variant continues to spread, we're looking into how misinformation on social media has played a role in vaccination rates. Dan Grossman found why that misinformation has been so effective.
Ah, the coveted blue check mark. If you've ever wondered why I dubbed someone an influencer on social media, this story should clear up any confusion, as it's about social media, the vaccine, and how 12 people with that check mark have been responsible for 73% of COVID vaccine misinformation that has spread online.
They've got a lot of sway and a lot of pull because that is how those kind of ecosystems are set up.
Sam Jay is an associate professor of communication studies at Metro State University in Denver. Wait, if we're talking about influencers, let's make his lighting better.
I think it's more kind of one-on-one dialogic communication that is really effective in this case.
Much better. He says those influencers are so influential in what they do for 2 main reasons. Their names carry weight, and the things they post are easy to digest.
Convenience is such a good word there, Dan, and ease, right? I think it's easier for us to find those shortcuts. It's easier for us to find somebody who does the thinking for us. And so that's why we've glommed onto these 12 folks, because again, right, like you pointed out, they have credibility. Those are names that we recognize.
It's not hard to see why. Those 12 people have a group following of more than 59 million people and were therefore identified by the nonprofit Center for Countering Digital Hate as the Disinformation Dozen. After analyzing 812,000 Facebook posts and tweets, the CCDH found 65% of them had come from these 12 people, which include a physician who embraces pseudoscience, a wellness blogger, a religious speaker, and a bodybuilder.
Evolutionarily, and as animals, right, that negative, right? Oh crap, I gotta get out of here, right? That stuff sticks, it lasts. Those messages, they circulate faster. And I think it's very hard for us to kind of break that cycle.
So what do we do about it? The CDC and nearly every other scientific institution has championed the vaccine as safe and effective. Even some governors of conservative states where vaccination rates are lower have changed their tune and started supporting it as well. Jay says there needs to be a change in dialogue, more face-to-face stuff where emotion can be felt, and a change in thinking that maybe the science isn't lying.
We kind of need to rethink how we're doing this, because at that kind of 30,000 foot level, the vaccine messaging just doesn't work.
The Center for Countering Digital Hate has a more hands-on approach, suggesting in its study that Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube completely removed these 12 people from their platforms, saying they're influencing people with misinformation at a pivotal point in the pandemic. I'm Dan Grossman.
It may look like traffic's back to normal, but data showing that it's not as bad as it was before the pandemic just yet. Texas A&M's Transportation Institute tracks nationwide traffic data. In 2020, daily commuter traffic was cut in half compared to 2019, and researchers say employment had a lot to do with it.
For decades, our data have indicated that there's a clear link between economic vitality and congestion levels. A roaring economy is always going to be related to more and more traffic congestion. So as a population grows, the congestion will continue.
Researchers say it makes sense that as jobs come back, there are more drivers on the road. And while the report shows that 2021 has already seen the fastest increase in traffic since 1982. We're still not completely back to normal.
Our travel behavior has been changed. We've all sort of have a different perspective on how we work and where we work and how often we go in and perhaps how we travel. And I think some of those changes could be fairly long lasting.
Experts say the one thing that hasn't changed much is truck traffic. All the semis and 18-wheelers were still on the road before and during the pandemic delivering essential goods. All right, well, Simone Biles is back. She plans on competing in the balance beam final at the Olympics tomorrow. She did withdraw from several competitions over mental health concerns during the games. Longtime comedian is fighting lung cancer. Kathy Griffin broke the news on Instagram today. She says she has never smoked, but is in surgery to have part of her lung removed.
It's really affecting the service and food industry very hard.
Another challenge may be looming for small businesses, getting the containers they need to serve customers. Ahead, we'll talk about the challenges the plastics industry is facing. You may notice at your favorite takeout or drink spot, even the grocery store, some plastic products are missing or in short supply. The pandemic and a perfect storm of other issues are to blame.
In fact, when you go to a grocery store, it's not surprising to see some shelves that are actually in low supply. And that is also partly due really to the supply chain issues that the economy is facing at the moment.
The chief economist for the Plastics Industry Association says demand surged at the start of the pandemic for healthcare products and single-use items. At the same time, they lost some 60,000 workers to health concerns. Then, the winter storm in Texas took facilities offline that make resin, which is a key raw material in at least half of plastic products. And production of resin is now down 25%.
You could probably see limited supply of items for food related to the food services sector, things that you would usually use for when you have like a backyard barbecue. Plates, flatware that's made of plastics, plastic cups.
The price has been going up for the past 2 years. So before I was paying about $45 for a case of 600 cups, and now I'm paying about $87, almost $90 for a case of 600 plastic cups. And then they disappeared.
Now, the manager of a Tampa area tea and specialty drink shop has recently had to switch to paper cups. There's no clear timeline from his plastics company on when they can deliver. And while the paper cups are cheaper and more environmentally friendly, they may not be the best option.
The thing is with the plastic, they were leak proof. One thing that I noticed is that when you put ice in them, it's just ice. It kind of starts getting mushy at the bottom.
Now, the good news is labor shortages are recovering, although not back to where they were pre-pandemic. The Plastics Association expects production to continue to pick up this quarter and end higher than last year. Now, the number of people leaving cities and buying homes in rural areas is growing. The boost that it's giving to small town economies and how they're working to keep the areas affordable.
As the Delta variant continues to spread, new public health orders are being brought back. But in some states, public health leaders have fewer powers than they did a year ago. Our Joe St. George joins us now with a breakdown of what is changing and why some health leaders view it as a concern.
Masks are back and mandates are increasing as the Delta variant continues to surge across the country.
Cases will go up further before they start to come back down.
While the federal government and the CDC certainly have the ability to enact public health orders, many of the restrictions in your community that were in place last year, for instance, came at the hands of local health departments or governors. But across the country, many of those leaders actually have fewer powers today than they did this time last year. According to the Network for Public Health Law, at least 15 states have passed or have considered measures to drastically undermine the authority of public health agencies to save lives. For instance, in Florida, the legislature or governor can now override any local health mandate if they think it violates civil liberties. A similar law is now in place in Ohio, where the state legislature is now allowed to override public health orders by the governor or health department. In Indiana, local governments cannot impose restrictions more stringent than those issued by the governor. In Utah, the legislature can now override override emergency health orders too. In Montana, local health agencies cannot limit attendance at religious worship services. Jill Krieger is a director with the Network for Public Health Law and has been studying this nationwide.
We're all for democratic process and getting more voices into the mix. The problem is how quickly the spread of disease can move. What we discovered was some concerning trends that would limit the ability of public health officials, as well as the ability of governors and other state leaders to respond to public health emergencies.
This limited authority in some places could be potentially significant as we enter this next phase of the pandemic. According to the latest government figures, 30 states have vaccinated less than half of their eligible populations. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
Turning now to the Olympics, and word today we will see Simone Biles back in action. Jim Ryan is in Tokyo to tell us when she'll compete next, plus the heartwarming moment between two athletes that showed us what the Olympic Games are all about.
Simone Biles will be back on the floor in the balance beam finals tomorrow after openly admitting her struggles with the twisties and withdrawing from multiple events. Teammate Jade Carey won gold this morning in the floor event and reacted to Biles' return.
Having Simone being back tomorrow is great. I'm really proud of her. She's been through a lot this Olympics, so it's going to be great to see her out there tomorrow.
Carey was coached by her father, who was on hand for her big moment.
It means everything to me to have my dad here. We've been working so hard for this together, so I'm really glad that I was able to do that for us tonight.
It's Jade's first Olympic medal. She was not a part of the team that won silver in the team event. Heartbreak for the women's soccer team. Team USA fell 1-0 to Canada, but will play for the bronze on Thursday. And on the diamond, Team USA fell to Japan in extra innings in the quarterfinals. The Americans will still play in the semis. The USA women's basketball team continued its winning ways, defeating France 93-82 for its 52nd consecutive win in Olympics competition. The team advances to the quarterfinals. And this is what the Olympic Games are all about.
We can continue with the jump off. Can we have 2 gold? It's possible. It depends if you decide on will be champions.
In a moment of true sportsmanship, Gianmarco Tamberi of Italy and Mutas Essa Barshim of Qatar jumped into each other's arms after agreeing to share the gold in the high jump instead of going to a jump-off. Tamberi was unable to compete in Rio because of injuries. The two friends are ecstatic with the outcome. Jim Ryan, ABC News, Tokyo.
Here's a look at the latest medal count. The U.S. leading the way with 64 total medals, 22 that are gold. But China staying just behind the total count with 62, including 29 golds, leading all other countries. The Russian Olympic Committee sitting in third with 50 total medals. The competition continues tonight in Tokyo.
The Senate is closer now to agreeing on an infrastructure bill. Bipartisan group of senators finalized the almost $1 trillion deal over the weekend. It includes money for projects that states and cities can rarely afford on their own. Billions is set aside for roads and bridges, water projects, internet projects, and electric vehicle charging stations. Now, if the Senate approves, the House could come back from recess to consider. Next, they will work on the larger bill to cover childcare, health care, and tax breaks. Now, with home prices so high across the country, people are relocating to rural areas. As Thomas Hoppe reports, some are even buying a property for new businesses to help jumpstart their lives.
Hey, Chris. Just the cost of living had gotten so high. Just really wanting to invest in something, possibly find something I could build equity in. And it's really hard to find something like that in major urban cities.
Welcome to Small Town America. This one happens to be Trinidad, Colorado, and Raton, New Mexico. But all across the country, you'll find towns like these.
You see a lot of people traveling through, stopping for gas, stopping for food. What we're really trying to do is bring back this economy in a diverse way that isn't subject to the whims of a single industry.
And now what else you'll find in small towns like this? More people moving here.
This is the very center of town. My name is Wally Wallace, and I am the Economic Development Director for the city of Trinidad, Colorado. 10 years ago, there were over 200 houses on the market. When I bought a house here 2.5 years ago, there was about 100 houses on the market. This time last year, there were 13 houses on the market. So just the amount of people looking to get out of major metropolises for a more affordable lifestyle, a more slow-paced lifestyle, is really just clear in the numbers of just the amount of homes that are available compared to 10 years ago.
Real estate sales in rural places are 10% higher. Some reasons include big city property markets have gotten too high. Add on the combination of the pandemic and accelerated technology shifts to work remotely. Well, you got yourself a recipe for a restart.
My name is Kayvon Kalabari. I'm the owner of Von Trinidad.
Which is why people like Kayvon moved here a year ago, getting a restart with more investing and opportunity.
So far to date, about 15 properties in Trinidad and Raton. Let me put it this way. I bought a 15,000 square foot building in Trinidad, beautiful historic building, for less than my 1,200 square foot house cost in Denver. The theater that we're standing in is about half the cost of my 1,200 square foot home in Denver. I think a lot of people reassessed their lives during the pandemic, even if they didn't have to move to a place like this for affordability issues. They're doing it for space. They're doing it because a remote work economy is something that's possible and that is desirable to people. And they come down here and they do see that these towns need some help, and I think are encouraged by their opportunities to start a new business, to start a family with less cost.
According to the Trinidad Economic Development Director, Wally Wallace, sales tax revenue is at its highest, and people moving here has filled holes in their city's market that it's lacked in the past decade.
There isn't everything. So if you create something, you're not necessarily competing with people. You are the person in that town that provides that service. Based upon our tax base, our sales tax revenue is up in every sector except for food and restaurants, or restaurants and bars.
Wally and Kayvon believe this trend is going to continue, which could bring hope and economic change for rural communities in need.
Focusing on worker cooperatives and employee-owned businesses and attainable housing and all the things that I think are a struggle in some of the big cities these days, but especially in rural areas, as they become more desirable for folks. We're hoping to retain this as an affordable, attainable place for people regardless of demographic.
I'm Thomas Hoppo reporting.
Now let's head on over to First Alert Chief Meteorologist Matt Hines.
And we are looking at a few showers out there this evening, but by 10 o'clock on the future track, it looks like things will start to quiet down across our area with the loss of any daytime heating. But until then, maybe a few showers and thunderstorms around from time to time. Tuesday morning, we start off mostly cloudy here, and I do think we'll break out to a little sunshine tomorrow afternoon. The air mass will be slightly drier and highs will be in the low 90s, so it's not going to feel too bad for August standards as we head to Tuesday afternoon. There could be an isolated storm or two. Then as we make our way into Wednesday, a few clouds in the morning, isolated showers and thunderstorms possible during the afternoon. So let's check out what we are anticipating for tonight. Temperatures down into the low to mid 70s. We'll go 72 in Hearn, 74 Bryan College Station, and maybe as high as about 76 as you head down toward Brenham. And then tomorrow, how about this? Highs, lower 90s for the most part, maybe a couple of upper 80s as well. And that's even with some sunshine and not quite as much humidity across the area. So for August, again, not looking too bad across our region on our Tuesday. Wednesday's not looking bad as well, 93 degrees. And again, maybe a few isolated thunderstorms here and there each and every afternoon, but the key word here is isolated, so most of us not seeing too much. Saturday, we'll keep it on the dry side at 96 degrees, 97 Sunday with maybe a few more isolated storm chances. That will go into next week as well as those highs remain into the 90s, but the good news is we're not talking about any 100s in the forecast, but we're still talking about enough humidity to keep those low temperatures at night up into the 70s.
Holograms are something we're accustomed to seeing in movies and TV shows, but the technology is making its way into classrooms. Through a donation, the University of Central Florida was able to bring holograms into healthcare education. It's believed to be the first university to use this technology in its curriculum. Now, real patients and families give their recorded accounts of what it's like living with different diagnoses.
I developed Parkinson's about 5-6 years ago.
Students have the opportunity to see the physical manifestations of the disorder. And that's important because in speech, a lot of what we are working with, we hear, right? It's perceptual. We hear the breakdown in their speech or in their language and their communication.
The healthcare hologram technology uses 4K cameras to bring patients into the classroom live or recorded. It does cost around $75,000. Last week marked what would have been Emmett Till's 80th birthday had he not been killed by a group of white men in 1955 in Mississippi. The 14-year-old black teen was murdered after being accused of whistling at a white woman at a grocery store. The crime shined a spotlight on the racial violence against black people in the Jim Crow South. The church where his funeral service was held has long been an important part of black history, and Usher Qureshi shows us a new effort to preserve the church decades after it catalyzed a nation to confront hate and try to heal.
So the balcony was like a square. So went from the pulpit, there was a choir stand all the way around.
Sharon Roberts grew up in this church on Chicago's South Side.
This is kind of where the church started. My great-grandfather built this.
When her great-grandfather built the Roberts Temple Church of God in Christ, it was the first of its kind in the Midwest, intended to heal.
He came here to start Roberts Temple, a holiness church. It wasn't heard of back then, and it was needed for what they called a wicked city here in Chicago.
The halls are adorned with images of decades past. But it was the brutal murder of Emmett Till, a black teenager in 1955 Mississippi, that thrust this house of God into the history books.
The unfortunate death of Emmett Till, a 14-year-old boy who was accused of whistling at a white woman down in Mississippi visiting his family and friends, was taken in the middle of the night by the husband and friends of this woman.
The men were charged with viciously beating the teen, lynching him, and tying him to a cotton gin before throwing his body into a river.
This is where Emmett Till's casket was.
Exactly. So right here, back when there were about 40 stairs, a staircase to come from downstairs up, and that's where his casket was brought up and laid here.
His mother, a member of Roberts Temple, brought him back to Chicago for the funeral. The service drew some 50,000 visitors. It was a galvanizing moment.
His mother was very, very certain that she wanted an open casket so the world could see what had happened to her son.
The church was recently added to America's 11 most endangered historic places list. So last month, when the National Trust for Historic Preservation announced more than $3 million in grants to 40 sites and organizations through its African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund, Roberts Temple Church was at the top of the list.
Our top awardee this year is Roberts Temple.
Executive Director Brent Leggs says the grant was an important opportunity to elevate the many ways that black women have contributed to the civil rights movement.
Emmett Till's mother in 1955, when she made the decision to have an open casket funeral, that not only showcased and demonstrated her character, her self-determination, her activism, but it was a catalytic moment in the American civil rights movement.
To restore the building and reimagine its use, Sharon Roberts says they will take the building back in time.
It's unbelievable because this will be the first phase of preserving a historic place. So we'll start there, and then our goal is to transform, renovate, restore the church back to 1955.
Beyond restoring the church to what it looked like during Emmett Till's funeral, they hope to gain national landmark status as well.
We're just happy to still be here for the community. We're small in number, very small membership, but we're mighty, and we plan to be here forever.
An opportunity to preserve the past for the future. Reporting from Chicago, I'm Usher Qureshi.
The State Department is expanding a program to help Afghans who may be in danger once the U.S. finishes its withdrawal from their home country. The refugee program is for Afghans who help the U.S. military overseas. Violence in Afghanistan has escalated in recent weeks. Gun sales are soaring in the U.S. right now, but ammo is in short supply. Manufacturers say they are making as much as they can, but this is not impacting just those buying for personal use, but law enforcement as well. During the pandemic, many pet shelters around the country have seen a rush of adoptions, but not every pet has chosen for a new home. Some just aren't suitable for adoption when they arrive at a shelter, and Maya Rodriguez takes us to a place where dogs with special behavioral needs are getting help and ultimately finding their forever home.
For these furry friends, good girl. It looks like an ordinary afternoon play date, but this is no ordinary place.
These cases are
quite dramatically the worst of the worst.
Tucked into a spot near North Carolina's Great Smoky Mountains sits the ASPCA's Behavioral Rehabilitation Center. Dogs that experience extreme cases of cruelty and neglect come here to get better.
It's not possible for them to go home and have time and love and just get better on their own. That's why we are here, so we can provide the treatment that they need.
Over an average of 13 weeks, the dogs are slowly socialized with people and other dogs and taught basic skills in preparation for their eventual adoption. So far, 500 dogs have graduated from the program.
Even walking a dog here is considered a win. Some of the dogs that arrive at the center have never even been outside, let alone gone for a walk.
It can be slow going. This little dog is Velma.
She loves getting little scritches on her chest and on her little back end. She can be tucked under your arm and carried around, and she loves going for walks and playing with other dogs.
But it wasn't always that way. Velma experienced terrible neglect in Puerto Rico before getting taken to New Jersey and eventually brought here for additional help.
So when they get here, they're not used to being around people. Not only can they not have relationships with people, because most of them never have, they also aren't comfortable even being close to people or being touched by people.
It's a growing problem, says Kristen Collins, Vice President of the ASPCA's Rehabilitation Services. Shelters around the country report seeing more and more animals with behavior problems.
Spay-neuter has certainly made a dent. So the days of animal welfare organizations welcoming high volumes of adoptable puppies are really going away. Most of our partners tell us that they see more and more animals entering with behavior problems, probably because we are reducing the population, and the ones who end up with us are the ones who need treatment of some kind.
Because of that, the center is also training shelter personnel from around the country, teaching them how to do this work. Since 2018, animal shelter staff from Washington State, Colorado, Texas, South Carolina, Ohio, New York, and Washington, D.C. have all traveled to the center for training, taking what they learned here back to their communities. And during the pandemic, 10,000 people from 600 animal welfare organizations underwent the center's virtual training.
Having that kind of connection with so many organizations across the country is just a very powerful thing. That is one of the most important missions we have, to share what we are learning about these animals.
One that can change the lives of these pups, giving them a chance at a better life. In Weaverville, North Carolina, I'm Maya Rodriguez.
Thanks for joining us for Krhd News at 6. We'll be back tonight at 10. Until then, have a great